But he was here in an interview with Lila Rose. I don't really know who Lila Rose is and what she does. I think this is a Catholic channel or something.
I've heard that name though.
And
Don't know anything about it.
he went on there to talk about various things, and he also ended up talking about Islam. And I thought this is worth listening to. So let's have a look at that.
Successors to Al Qaeda, what are called ISIS. These are the outbreak of what we would know as the successors to Al Qaeda, what are called ISIS. These are Sunni jihadis who view the murder of Christians who resist conversion to Islam as an imperative.
I think there's a lot of people who look at the Middle East and they just see constant, from their, Western vantage point, maybe American vantage point, maybe constant turmoil, dictators that get deposed, new regimes that, come to power, warring in between sects of Islam, radical Islamists, ISIS, Al Qaeda, emerging, different sects fighting. And then there's Christians who are kind of caught up in the middle of the firestorm.
Islam is the most disruptive historical development in the history of Christianity.
Did you hear that?
That's true. That's true. They conquered like 80% of the Muslim world.
Yeah.
I mean, 80% of the Christian world.
Yeah. He said it right there. Islam has been the most disruptive historical development in the history of Christianity.
And he will be defrocked for saying this tomorrow.
Not in the Orthodox Church. She's a pro-life. Okay, man. Everybody's bashing me because I don't know her. But
how could you not know?
How could you not know? What's wrong with you? You're sick.
Did you not know she's pro-life? Shame on you.
Do you eat your channel? How did you not know her?
Yes. Why don't you go jump off a bridge?
People are saying you should read Rock and Sand.
Muhammad was born in 570 in what is now Saudi Arabia. And by the time he finished, by 630 or so, he had led
632, liar.
Raids against Jewish and Christian tribes.
He doesn't know. He doesn't even know.
If he doesn't even know that it was 632, how can you trust anything he says?
If he doesn't know, he's got to go.
25 raids against Jewish and Christian tribes, unprovoked. He established a worldview in Islam.
Is this true, David? Did
he... Unprovoked? They didn't believe him. What more provocation could he ask for?
Is this true, David? Did he raid Jews and Christians unprovoked? Did Muhammad do such a thing?
Yeah, and pagans.
Why would he do that?
Because he wanted their stuff.
Well, that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, think. If you've got something and I want it, why shouldn't I just take it? This is Muhammad's realization. Great. Wait, they've got stuff that I want, but I can just get my followers to help me take it. And I can build an entire religion around this.
And then you can say, I give you two good options.
I give you two good options. You said, I'll take them and we'll take your stuff.
That divides the whole world into two. We do this too as Christians, right? We view the whole world in two parts. The area that has been evangelized, that has heard the good news and has had an opportunity to believe in Jesus and to enter into the kingdom of God, and those parts of the world that have not yet been evangelized. For us, that's how Christians are always looking at it. Islam views the world in two parts, what they call the House of Islam. The House of Islam is where not just there are predominance of Muslims, but Sharia or Muslim law is in force. If it's not in force, there may be a majority of Muslims, but they don't consider that truly the House of Islam. The rest of the world, you know what they call the rest of the world? The House of War. That's how a Muslim divides. That's the Quran.
It was actually surprising to me that that a priest sits down and talks about this on camera, and that he also knows the concepts here, that he can deliver the idea here. This is a very important thing to bring up when you want to talk about Islam and why it's so violent and disruptive, and how it's different from Christianity, and why it has been violently subjugating others and making life worse for everyone and so on. he has the whole idea of how Islam views the world as Darul Harb, which is house of war, and Darul Islam, which is house of Islam or house of peace. So that's how Islam sees the world. He knows the concept. He's not making this up. I learned the very same thing growing up as a Muslim. I learned that any place that is not under Islamic law is a Darul Harb, that this is a land of war, which is meant to be fought and brought under Islamic dominance. Now, there is one more thing, which is that normally, historically seen, Muslims have always considered a place that once has come under Islamic dominance permanently as a house of Islam, and that place should always be a house of Islam. And if it falls out of the hands of Islam, then it must be brought back into the hands of Islam at some point in one way or another. This has always been an Islamic idea. But this is basically how Islam divides the world. He's completely correct on that. Although David thinks this is nonsense.
No, what's interesting is you're talking about how refreshing it is to have a priest talking about this, and I'm sitting here thinking, given what's going on in the world and how long it's been going on, shouldn't every priest be talking about this stuff and know this stuff? Like, shouldn't this be required basic knowledge for Christians, especially Christian leaders at this point? It's like, how is it like with all the Christians in the world and all the different priests and pastors and stuff like that? It's like still surprising to us when one sounds knowledgeable about Islam at all.
Shocking. This priest says something that everyone should have been saying.
Priest humiliates all weakling Christians. Based priest humiliates weakling Christians.
And imagine what that means for Christians. What that means for Christians and has meant for Christians since 634, when the Muslims came into Jerusalem and then into Damascus and then into all of our major cities in North Africa, and then started their jihad across the Mediterranean Sea, coming into the southern parts of France and Spain. What that has meant for us is several things. One, if you want to maintain your freedom, you want to maintain your rights, you have to convert to Islam. If you do that as a Christian, you've lost your soul. You've betrayed God. You've become what the church calls an apostate. God forbid. Most of our people didn't do that. Some did.
You mean you're saying historically, or you're saying recently?
I'm saying since the 7th century.
Since the 7th century.
Until today.
Until today, right.
Absolutely until today. This is Islam. It's
Well,
not, it's not a type of Islam.
It's the idea of this, how...
Did you hear that? He said this is Islam. It's not a type of Islam. This is Islam.
Did the early church win souls? Martyrdom and poverty, you'd say, and the influence and love, of course.
Absolutely.
And
love.
then how did Islam win its first
Jesus
conquest?
said, no greater witness do we have, no greater potency than this, that we love one another. He said, by this, all men will know that you're my disciples. What's the ultimate apologetic? If you love one another the way I loved you. This is how we won the world.
Catholics and Orthodox have to get together, but that's a whole other. We do love each other, of course.
I think we do.
We do, of
not
course.
the Protestants.
Islam, it was a religion with its early, centuries marked in violence to conquer.
There are over, Lila, there's 100 in my count. I used to teach a class at the local Christian university called Cal Baptist in my town, called The Cross and the Crescent, the history of Christian-Muslim relations. When I was teaching that class, I read through the Quran many times in preparation for class. And I noted how many direct commands to violence Muhammad gave. My count, 123. 123 explicit commands
124
to violence to those who...
Learn to read, buddy. Learn to count.
So 123 commands to violence, he says.
Resisted the advance of Islam, and particularly to Christians, including details on how to kill us. Stab them in the neck. I mean, this is one of his commands. It's not a coincidence that many people in England
he changed it to
have suffered Islamic violence have been stabbed in the neck. People go, oh, they got stabbed in the neck because the person was crazy. Actually, he was just following Muhammad's commandments.
What do you make of
47 verse 4, ladies and gentlemen?
The funny thing is, when I heard him say this, I immediately thought of Robert Spencer, because this is something that Robert Spencer will often bring up and say when he describes terrorist attacks by Muslims, by Islamic terrorists. He will draw attention to the fact that the Quran is specific on striking their necks and all that, and will then point out that this is something that Islamic terrorists tend to frequently do, where they attack non-Muslims in non-Muslim countries and strike their necks or stab their necks, and this is directly tied to or connected to the Quran or inspired by it. This is not a talking point that I ever really went into, but as soon as he said it, as soon as I heard him say it, this just reminded me immediately of Robert Spencer.
Yeah, when we do This Week in Jihad, Robert's telling the stories, and he always goes, and a Muslim stabbed someone. Guess where they stabbed him? And I go, I'll guess the neck for 200. And he goes, wow, I don't know how you do it. As far as this dude's voice and the cadence of his speaking, it reminds me of Jay Smith. Guy has a similar tone and cadence to his speaking.
Nice. But do you agree? Do you agree with what he said, or do you think it's Islamophobic?
Well, it's Islamophobic, but I agree with it.
Interesting. Okay. So which verse is that again, David?
What?
Stabbing them in the neck.
Did you say version?
Verse.
Oh, 47:4.
47:4. There you go. Now, if those of you who are at home watching this before your televisions want to fact check this and open a Quran to that verse, you will of course find out that it doesn't say that at all. It says Islam is a religion of peace
and tolerance.
There you go.
The person was crazy. Actually, he was just following Muhammad's commandments.
He was just following the book and the man. The book and the man.
Obviously, we had Bill Asaley on the show recently. He's a California assemblyman. He's not Riverside County. He's adjacent, but really solid guy. He's quoting Mother Teresa, in our interview. Good man, and he's fighting for pro-life. He's fighting for marriage.
Sure.
And, here he is born and raised a Muslim. And still, I don't get into the details of his faith practice, but you have a lot of Muslims like this who, or a country like Jordan, where you presumably have, Muslims, Christians, Jewish people, or Israel, Muslims, Christians, and Jewish people living together in largely harmony. Obviously, can be some friction around the edges.
I'm not sure I would.
Did you see his face?
No, I didn't. Where?
Obviously, can be some friction around the edges.
That dude's funny. Friction around the edges.
He's like, really?
Little friction.
Or Israel, Muslims, Christians, and Jewish people living together in largely harmony. Obviously, can be some friction around the edges.
I'm not sure I would describe the coexistence of Christians, Muslims, and Jews in the Middle East as largely in harmony.
I'm playing a devil's advocate to say in some cases there can be, if I had Muslim
this is nice, man.
here to get kind of say, hey, I'm a moderate Muslim.
The majority, there are forms of Muslims, right? The majority are the Sunni, and the Sunni have given us the hardest time. So I mentioned traveling in Syria in 2010. 2011, the war broke out, and now we don't have 2 million Christians in Syria anymore. Maybe we have 300,000 or 400,000.
Incredible. Yeah. There used to be how many?
2 million.
2 million Christians in Syria.
That was just in 2010. There used to be a lot more than that.
2010.
2010.
And now it's down to a few
Vast
100,000.
majority are gone. Absolutely.
And they've fled or they've been killed.
Yeah, she said Jews, Christians, Muslims, and Jews in Jordan. There are no Jews in Jordan. So she might have gotten that mixed up. The only place where there is still a significant Jewish population living is Israel. There are no Jews left in Jordan. It would be too difficult, too dangerous to live there. So
both.
Incredible. Hundreds of thousands
I'll give you an
of Christians,
example.
over a million,
I stayed,
fled or killed.
Both.
Now it's down to a few
Vast
100,000.
majority are gone. Absolutely.
And they've fled or they've been killed.
Both.
Incredible. Hundreds of thousands
I'll give you an
of Christians,
example.
over a million,
I stayed,
fled or killed.
When I was there, I stayed in the ancient city of Aleppo. It's the largest city in Syria in the north.
I'd love to visit one day.
incredible town, literally going back to the time of the apostles. So I met there. I was hosted by the Metropolitan Archbishop Boulos Yaji, who was a man of incredible talents, and gave us a wide tour of his metropolis there and all the ministries that were going on. He had an internet cafe for the young people. I played basketball with the young people there at his metropolis. He had a monastery in his on the third. I think it was a 7th floor. It's a 7th floor, like archdiocesan bishopric, and on one of the floors were the nuns. It was just an unbelievable place. We went across into Turkey. We got to see so many churches there, and of course our ancient cathedral in Antioch, which is the home of St. John Chrysostom. It's where he's born and raised. Just to the north of there, there's a mountain in which 300 monks lived in caves at the time that St. John Chrysostom, who was born in 347, when he was growing up. I mean, that's like what they went to see on feast days. They would just walk, 1.5 miles to the mountain and have a conversation with the Syrian ascetic who had been there for 20 years in a cave. I mean, this is how they lived. This is the potency of Christianity. Well, it was less than a year after I left Aleppo that on a humanitarian mission, Metropolitan Boulos and his driver were stopped by Sunni jihadis. They pulled his deacon out of the driver's seat. They shot him in the head right in front of him, and we have never seen our Metropolitan Archbishop since. We prayed for him every day in our churches for over 10 years.
Meaning he was kidnapped.
He was kidnapped and presumably killed.
But you've never had been able to find the body or bury.
Our Patriarch John X is blood brothers with Metropolitan Paul. Metropolitan Boulos means Paul. Metropolitan Paul and Patriarch John are literal brothers. They have a third sister, who's a nun in Syria, in one of our monasteries.
So you know that
Yeah, I don't know if you know about that story, David. You probably don't, because you don't concern yourself with people in the Middle East. But I only heard about this. I heard about this long ago, but I recently looked into the details of this as I was looking into the different churches and the Orthodox Church and Antioch. Let's see, Boulos, Antioch. Let's see. So, abducted bishops Johanna Ibrahim and Boulos Yazigi. They were, let's see what happened there. So he basically just described it. He was kidnapped on, so here you have the article. Johanna Ibrahim, also Gregorius Johanna Ibrahim, is the Syriac Orthodox Archbishop of Aleppo. He was kidnapped on April 22, 2013, along with Paul, the Greek Orthodox Metropolitan. This one is the person they're talking about, Boulos al-Yazigi. Yeah, this happened under Islamic territory during the civil war in Syria. This is what happens under Islam.
I said Paul Yazigi.
Yazigi, Yaziji. Sunrise in Paradise said Boulos because there's no P in Arabic. Yes, that's precisely why. I hope he didn't mean to tell me that.
Yeah, we all know he's the apostate prophet.
Yes. Gotam said, I can cry whenever I want. You can't. Stop it.
Deacon he was with was shot.
We have
That's
pictures
confirmed.
of that. Yeah.
Lord have mercy, but you don't know what happened
We have never been able to find. Our patriarch has literally, with the collaboration of the Pope, with the collaboration of presidents of countries, have put pressure on the Turkish government. Some people in Turkey say a judge revealed that he punished some jihadis who claimed to have murdered him and buried him in the sand. But we don't know. We just don't know.
It's still missing.
Happened. Do you have a sense of what you think might have happened?
I don't know. But this is 2013. This is 12 years ago. That's a long time not to hear from him, huh? It's a long time not to hear from him. Anyway, so our patriarch finally did replace him. So we have a new metropolitan archbishop there. But just to bring this from 2011 to today, when the president Assad was driven out of Damascus and fled to Russia. And the jihadis,
The Syrian president.
that's right, the president of
Assad,
Syria,
yeah.
who had been president for many years and succeeded his father, they are, by the Western media, considered to be terrible tyrants. All I can speak for is the reality that under this family dictatorship, the Christians have fared much better than we have fared under Sunni Muslims.
And what
Now, this is a very, very interesting part and perspective to go into, because David, you probably remember we have heard objections when we talked about Assad, the dictator of Syria, who recently fled to Russia to be with Putin. Whenever we talked about him and how bad he was, and how bad those who replace him will be, we received some responses from people saying stuff like Assad was good to minorities, Assad was good to Christians, and so on. So he, for example, also points out that under Assad, the Christians were generally treated well. But this is the thing. It could be that under the Assad regime, the Christians and other minorities were treated relatively better than under Islamic rule. And we will also point this out, that the Islamists who are coming in place of Assad, the dictator, will probably be worse toward the disbelievers, toward the Christians and the others. However, just because the new ones are worse, that doesn't mean that the old one was good, right? The old one was also oppressive of different minorities. He was corrupt as corrupt as it gets. He was a violent guy who had people disappeared all the time. People were tortured in his chambers and so on. There's a constant fight, a constant conflict in the Middle East, including in Syria, going on between different factions of Muslims. And Assad was only a part of that entire conflict. Under some people, the Christians might be treated better than under others. That doesn't mean that those leaders are good people. They are all pretty messed up.
Yeah, I mean, our perspective was basically dictator, but better than what's going to come after him. It's similar to Saddam Hussein. Saddam Hussein was an evil dictator. He was massively better than ISIS. Massively better than ISIS.